Well, within a lot of the comments this evening, most of you have already spoken my devotional for tonight. So that's good. It's going to go along well with our class. Something I've thought about just in the few weeks that we've been here, the time that we've spent on our Wednesday evening classes talking about evangelism and looking at evangelists, if you will, and ways that others have spread the gospel or been encouraged to witness about what had occurred in their lives with Christ. And I know we haven't been here to take part in it, but you've been doing a study out at the Britons on evangelism, encouraging us to go out and tell of Christ. And I've thought about that in the past, and growing up in the church, and I know a lot of you don't know a lot about me, but I grew up in the church. The whole time growing up, I remember hearing studies or sermons about go out and evangelize, go out and teach, go out and preach. I've been part of classes, I've helped teach classes about evangelizing, and then sometimes I ask myself, well, if we're so sure of the product we have, if you think about it from the standpoint of a salesman, if we're so sure of the product that we have, why does someone have to tell us to go talk about it? So I think sometimes as Christians we take for granted what we have. Otherwise we'd be out there knocking on everyone's door. Maybe we don't appreciate what we have the way that we should. You know, this time of year, and some of these thoughts came up Sunday, this time of year, there's a lot of thought about gifts. With it being, Christmas, children look forward to gifts under the tree. Adults may receive a gift from a loved one that they hold very dear. It's precious to them. Something that someone has given them. Hopefully, if we've matured and are full of love, we look forward to giving someone a gift and seeing their reaction. We enjoy being able to give of ourselves to someone in some way. So we understand the idea of gifts. We may sometimes use this time of year to reference the gift that God has given us in His Son. And we talk about His Son coming to this earth and what a gift that was. And certainly we talk about that when we surround the Lord's table on Sunday mornings. About the great gift of the Lord's Son coming to this earth. And we understand the idea of gifts. We understand that our gifts to others pale in comparison to the gift that we receive from God and Him sending His Son. I'd like us to think for just a little bit tonight about one of His greatest gifts to us. In fact, they go hand in hand. It's not His Son, but it's His grace. God's grace is a significant gift to us that I think we have a hard time comprehending it really as humans. How significant that gift is. If you know the word or the meaning of grace is unmerited favor or unearned favor, undeserved favor. We've found favor in God's eyes even though we didn't deserve it. We couldn't earn it. But He gave it to us anyway. Now it came to us through His Son, through that sacrifice. But I think His grace for us is somewhat different than that. They work together, obviously. He didn't have to give us grace. It was truly a gift by His choice, by His choosing, even before the beginning of time as we know it. It seems like sometimes while we may acknowledge God's grace and we talk about it in sermons and things like that, maybe sometimes we avoid talking about it too much because there are some denominations that they hang their entire salvation upon grace. So maybe we kind of skirt around it, we talk about it, we mention it, we acknowledge it, but do we really focus on it to the point where we understand it? I think sometimes we avoid it a little bit because of those reasons. And understanding that, we understand that without obedience up to the rest of God's plan, His grace would be of no value to us either. we must be obedient to the rest of his plan. But the fact is, without God's grace, his unmerited favor, his unmerited love, we'd still be lost. We as Christians should spend some time thinking, meditating on that idea that I don't deserve it. I can't earn it. There's no amount of obedience on my part that I could earn God's forgiveness, that I could earn his grace. It was truly a gift. God's grace was a gift. If you will, look in Romans chapter 5. I'd like to read a few verses there before we close this evening. Romans chapter 5, we'll read verses 6 through 11. For when we were still without strength, in due time, Christ died for the ungodly. For scarcely for a righteous man will one die, yet perhaps for a good man someone would even dare to die. But God demonstrates his own love toward us, and that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Much more than having now been justified by his blood, we shall be saved from wrath through him. For if when we were enemies, we were reconciled to God through the death of his Son, much more, having been reconciled, we shall be saved by his life. And not only that, but we also rejoice in God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we have now received the reconciliation. God showed his grace upon us when we were still his enemies. We were fighting against him in the way that we lived our life, and when we were living in sin, we were fighting God. We were truly his enemies. That grace was already there. His love for us was already there. Do we appreciate that gift the way we should? And I think sometimes as Christians we get so focused on the law, and keeping the law, and not that obedience isn't important. It is absolutely necessary. But I think it's dangerous to get so focused on keeping of the law like the Pharisees did, that we forget we're relying on that grace as well. That unmerited, that undeserved favor. Once we have a good recognition, a good understanding of that grace, how much better equipped will we be to be evangelists? How much better will we be ready to go out and, I guess, promote what we're selling, if you will, if you want to put it in those terms. How much better will we be at teaching others about what God has done for me? Like the examples that we've been looking at in the Wednesday night classes. You know, the first thing they do is talk about what they found, who they found, and what he's done for them, or what he means to them. And many of them didn't fully comprehend, fully understand. I think it's easy for us to see that they didn't fully understand or comprehend who Christ was. I don't think we fully understand, even though we have it in writing in front of us. We don't understand everything there is to know about him. And sometimes we fail in that way. We have the advantage that we've seen the whole story, front to back. They were in the middle of it. Do we really appreciate what his gift of grace means to me? It's just something I'd like you to think about. And I try to spend time thinking about it, and I don't think I fully comprehend his grace for me either. So it's something we should spend time thinking about.
628.
If you would, number 628, if you take your songbooks out, you'll see number 628. If there would be any that has any need of the congregation or anything this evening, please make it known when we stand and sing.